Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Steel and Silence. Maxwell Winters never raised his voice. That's what terrified people most about him. As a Special Activities Division operative with 20 years in covert operations, Max had developed a reputation within the intelligence community. He spoke softly and carried no stick at all, because he'd already calculated 43 ways to neutralize a threat before most men could clench their fists. "You sure about another deployment?" asked Dennis Kolchak, his longtime friend and the only CIA handler he trusted, as they sat in a dingy Virginia bar 3 miles from Langley. "Liana's been on my ass about you spending more time at home." Max swirled the bourbon in his glass. "Liana needs to mind her own marriage. She worries, man. We all do. 12 deployments in 15 years. You've got that sweet house in the suburbs, a wife who somehow puts up with your perpetual absence, and kids who barely recognize you. Noah's 17. Brooklyn's 15. They recognize me just fine." Max drained his glass. "It's a 4-month operation. Simple extraction. I've done worse for longer." Dennis leaned forward. "This ain't about the job, is it? Something's up with Adrian." Max's eyes hardened briefly before his expression smoothed back to neutral. "Nothing I can't handle when I get back." The truth was more complicated. For 3 months, Max had noticed the patterns changing at home. Adrienne's sudden interest in fitness. New clothes. The slight adjustment in how she communicated. The password changes on her personal accounts. The girls' night out. Events that never seemed to include any of her usual friends. Max was a man who noticed patterns. It's what had kept him alive in Kandahar, Damascus, and a dozen black sites whose existence the government would deny until Judgment Day. "I've got the coverage installed," he told Dennis. "Remote monitoring. If anything happens while I'm gone, I'll know." Dennis shook his head. "Jesus, Max. You bugged your own house." "Just insurance," Max replied. "Just insurance." That night, as Max packed his gear, Adrienne watched from their bedroom doorway. Tall, with honey blonde hair and a tennis player's build at 40, she'd been a corporate attorney when they'd met. Now she managed the household and their investments while he vanished for months at a time. "For months?" she asked, arms crossed. "Give or take. Noah's graduation is in 5. Max zipped his bag. "I'll make it back." "You always say that. And I always come back." Adrienne's expression flickered with something. Frustration, resentment, or perhaps guilt. "The kids barely know who their father is anymore. They know I provide for this family. They know I keep this country safe so they can live in their bubble of privilege. Is that what we are to you? A bubble of privilege?" Max finally looked at her directly. "We'll talk when I get back." Adrienne looked away first. "We always do. And nothing ever changes." Later that night, Max slipped into his children's rooms. Noah was asleep, his 6 feet 2 inches frame barely fitting the bed he'd had since childhood, lacrosse trophies lining the shelves. The acceptance letter from UCLA was prominently displayed on his desk. Max stood silently, memorizing his son's features. In Brooklyn's room, his daughter was still awake, scrolling through her phone. She acknowledged him with barely a glance. "For months," Max said quietly. "Whatever," Brooklyn replied, not looking up. "I've left emergency contact protocols with your mother." "You always do." Max hesitated, then placed a small metal object on her nightstand. Brooklyn finally looked up. "What's that?" "A satellite beacon. Military grade. If you're ever in real trouble, twist the top and pull. I'll find you anywhere in the world within 8 hours." Brooklyn's hard expression softened slightly. "Is that even legal for civilians?" The corner of Max's mouth twitched. "No." For a moment, father and daughter shared a conspiratorial look. Then Brooklyn's gaze returned to her phone. "Safe travels, I guess." Max nodded and left. In the hallway, he paused, listening to the quiet house he'd purchased 10 years ago. A beautiful colonial on 2 acres in McLean, Virginia. For bedrooms, a finished basement, a 2-car garage. The American dream, secured with blood money from operations nobody would ever know about. As he descended the stairs, his phone vibrated. A notification from one of his security protocols. Adrienne's phone had just sent a text. "He leaves tomorrow." For months this time. The recipient's name was simply B. Max's expression didn't change as he turned off the notification. He had time. He would handle it when he returned. He always did. Chapter 2. The Opportunist. Bryant Powell believed in seizing opportunities. At 45, he built a reputation in Northern Virginia real estate by recognizing patterns others missed. The housing market crash of 2008 had been his first major windfall, buying distressed properties at pennies on the dollar. His second came from developing luxury condos for the intelligence community that flooded the D.C. suburbs. His latest opportunity had walked into his office 9 months ago wearing tennis whites and a wedding ring. Adrian Winters. Another headache? Adrian asked, pressing her fingertips against Bryant's temples as they lay in her bed, the bed she shared with her absent husband. Just thinking about the Henderson property, Bryant lied smoothly. In reality, he was calculating the net worth of Maxwell Winters based on property records, investment patterns, and the snippets of information Adrian had revealed over their 8-month affair. The man was worth millions, most of it hidden in offshore accounts and shell companies. A CIA operative living well beyond his government salary, with a wife who had no idea of the full extent of their wealth. It was the perfect opportunity. I spoke with Noah again about the plan, Adrian said, tracing patterns on his chest. He's still hesitant, but Brooklyn's completely on board. Bryant smiled. They're smart kids. They understand their father checked out of this family years ago. Maxwell never checked out, Adrian corrected. He was never checked in. The house, the lifestyle, the college funds, it was all just cover for whatever he really does overseas. Bryant had spent months cultivating this relationship, moving from sympathetic real estate agent to friend to lover. He'd started by showing Adrian properties just for fun, then suggesting investments, then pointing out how she deserved better than a ghost husband who disappeared for months at a time. The children had been trickier. Noah, the high school senior, remained suspicious and loyal to his father. Brooklyn, however, had embraced Bryant as the attentive father figure she'd never had. "You're sure about the power of attorney?" Bryant asked casually. "It's ironclad. When Max is deployed on classified missions, I have full legal authority to manage our assets." It was his idea, in case something happened to him overseas. Bryant nodded. Maxwell's contingency planning would be his undoing. And the offshore accounts? Adrienne's expression clouded. "I still can't access those. Max keeps them compartmentalized." "No matter," Bryant assured her. "The house and domestic investments are more than enough to start our new life." Over the next month after Maxwell's deployment, Bryant methodically executed his plan. First, a series of property transfers moving the Winters assets into new LLCs controlled by Adrian. Then, an accelerated sale of their McLean home to a straw buyer. Finally, a careful draining of the accessible accounts. Noah remained resistant, refusing to move out of the house until his graduation. "This is bullshit," Noah had shouted during their final confrontation. "Dad trusted you to watch over things, not sell everything and run off with your boyfriend." "Your father hasn't been here for you or me for years," Adrian retorted. "Brian is offering us a fresh start." "A fresh start?" "He's a vulture circling what Dad built." Brooklyn, manipulated by promises of freedom from her strict father and a new life in California, had sided with her mother. "Dad's never around anyway. What difference does it make if we're gone when he gets back?" The difference, as Bryant well knew but never said aloud, was about $7 million in assets. 2 months into Maxwell's deployment, the Winters family home was sold, their domestic accounts emptied, and Adrian Winters had filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment. Bryant and Adrian purchased a beachfront property in Newport Beach under a new LLC, and Brooklyn was enrolled in an exclusive private school for her sophomore year. Only Noah rejected the plan, choosing to stay with his father's friend Dennis until graduation. His parting words to his mother hung in the air like a prophecy. "You have no idea what Dad is capable of." "None at all." Chapter 3, The Warning Signs. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Garcia had seen that look before. Sitting across from Maxwell Winters in a forward operating base in Syria, he recognized the 1,000-yard stare of a man whose mind was somewhere else entirely. But unlike most operators who got that look, the ones thinking about death or questioning their choices, Maxwell was different. His eyes weren't vacant, they were calculating. "Surveillance package picked up another transmission," Garcia said, sliding a tablet across the makeshift desk. "Your assessment?" Max glanced at the decrypted messages, his focus instantly returning. "It's a diversion. The real movement will be through the northern corridor." "That's not what Intel suggests." "Intel is looking at the obvious patterns." Max tapped the screen. I'm looking at what's not there. For 3 months, Max had led extraction operations in Syria with ruthless efficiency. But in the past 2 weeks, Garcia had noticed changes in his behavior. Longer hours on secure communications, more frequent checks of his personal devices, a growing tension in his normally stoic demeanor. Something's wrong at home, Garcia stated rather than asked. Max didn't answer immediately. Nothing I can't handle. Need emergency leave? I can arrange it. No. Max's response was instant. I need to finish this operation. Later that night, Garcia found Max alone in the communications tent, staring at his encrypted tablet. How long have you known? Garcia asked. Max didn't look up. About Adrian? 8 months. About their plan to take everything? 3 months. Jesus, Max. Why didn't you stop it before deployment? Because I needed proof. I needed to see how far they'd go. Max finally looked up, his eyes cold. And I needed to be officially deployed and unreachable when they made their move. Garcia understood immediately. You're setting up an alibi. I'm establishing a record that I was 7,000 miles away with 24 witnesses when certain events occurred. What are you planning, Max? Justice, Max replied simply. Nothing more, nothing less. Garcia had known Maxwell Winters for 15 years, through 3 wars and countless black operations. He'd seen him walk into terrorist strongholds alone and emerge unscathed. He'd watched him break hardened enemy combatants without raising his voice or laying a finger on them. Maxwell Winters didn't get angry. He got methodical. The house is gone, Max continued, scrolling through property records. Sold 2 weeks ago to a shell corporation. The McLean accounts are empty. Adrian has filed for divorce, claiming abandonment. And the children? A flicker of something, perhaps pain, crossed Max's features. Brooklyn's with them. Noah stayed behind. Garcia nodded slowly. What do you need from me? In exactly 4 weeks, I'll need you to accompany me to a court hearing with a sealed file. You'll need to testify that it's authentic and classified. What's in the file? Max finally looked up, his expression giving nothing away. Insurance. The next morning, Max received a highly encrypted message from Dennis Kolchak. Situation deteriorating. Noah being pressured to sign documents. Adrienne's boyfriend moved into Newport property. Legal team attempting to freeze remaining accounts. Need instructions. Max sent a single reply. Maintain position. Countermeasures active. 28 days. Garcia watched as Max returned to mission planning with renewed focus. That night, he contacted his superior at the Pentagon with an unusual request. A background investigation into Bryant Powell, real estate developer in Northern Virginia. The response came 12 hours later. Subject as pattern of targeting high-value divorces. 3 previous instances identified. Financial fraud likely. FBI notified. Garcia showed the report to Max, who merely nodded. It's already in the file. Max, Garcia said carefully, whatever you're planning is already in motion, Max finished for him. Has been for months. Garcia had seen enough combat to recognize when a trap was being set, and for the first time in his military career, he felt sorry for the enemy. Chapter 4, Homecoming. The young couple who answered the door of his former home looked genuinely shocked. Can we help you? The husband asked, standing protectively in front of his pregnant wife. Maxwell Winters, still in his combat boots and deployment fatigues, studied them carefully. This is my house. 4287, Oak Ridge Lane. The couple exchanged nervous glances. We purchased this house 3 months ago, the wife explained. From a woman named Adrian Winters. Max's expression remained neutral. May I ask who handled the sale? Bryant Powell Realty, the husband replied. Look, we have all the paperwork if there's some kind of. No need, Max interrupted gently. A misunderstanding. I apologize for disturbing you. As Max turned to leave, the husband called after him. If you're Mr. Winters, your wife said you weren't coming back. That you were deployed indefinitely. Max paused but didn't turn around. I always come back. 3 hours later, Max sat in Dennis Kolchak's living room, reviewing the documentation his friend had compiled during his absence. They moved fast, Dennis said, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon. Within weeks of your deployment, Bryant Powell had integrated himself into every aspect of your family's finances. The house, the investment accounts, everything he could access through Adrian's power of attorney. And Noah? The kid's been staying in my guest room. Refused to go to California with them. He's at lacrosse practice now. He'll be shocked you're back early. Max nodded, scanning property records. The Newport Beach house. Purchased for $4.3 million. Cash transaction. Your cash, Dennis corrected. Adrian liquidated your domestic investments. She couldn't touch the offshore accounts, obviously. Obviously. Max continued reviewing documents with mechanical precision. The divorce filing claims abandonment and irreconcilable differences. Court date is set for next week. Dennis watched his friend carefully. Most men would be falling apart right now, Max. Most men aren't me. Even for you, this is cold. Your wife cleaned you out, moved across the country with your daughter and her lover, and you're acting like you're reviewing intelligence reports. Max finally looked up. Because that's exactly what I'm doing. Before Dennis could respond, the front door opened and Noah Winters stepped in, still in his lacrosse uniform. He froze when he saw his father. Dad, for the first time since his return, something cracked in Max's composed demeanor. He stood slowly, facing his son, taller than him now, with the same strong jaw and watchful eyes. You're early, Noah said. Your deployment. Concluded ahead of schedule. Noah dropped his sports bag and crossed the room in 3 strides, wrapping his father in a fierce hug. Max stiffened momentarily before returning the embrace. I didn't sign anything, Noah said fiercely. They tried to get me to sign papers for the trust fund, but I refused. Max nodded approvingly. Smart move. Brooklyn went with them. Noah continued, pulling back. I tried to convince her to stay, but she made her choice. Max finished for him. We all make choices, son, and we all face consequences for those choices. Dennis cleared his throat. Noah, your dad's had a long journey. Why don't you grab a shower while we finish up here? After Noah left, Dennis leaned forward. What's your next move? Court, Max replied simply. I need to make an appearance. You know Adrian's lawyer will eat you alive. They've built a case that you abandoned the family, that your deployments constitute willful neglect. They're painting you as an absentee father who cares more about playing spy than raising his children. Max's expression didn't change. Let them. This isn't some terrorist cell you can outmaneuver, Max. This is the legal system. Powell has connections with judges throughout Northern Virginia. He's done this before to other deployed servicemen. I'm aware. Max gathered the documents into a precise stack. I need you to contact Lieutenant Colonel Garcia at this secure number. Tell him Operation Homecoming is in effect and to bring the file. Dennis looked confused. What file? The one that's going to end this. Max stood. Where is Brooklyn's beacon? Her what? A small metal device I gave her before deployment. Military-grade emergency beacon. Dennis shook his head. If she took it with her, it's in California. What? Insurance, Max replied cryptically. He pulled out his phone and checked a tracking application. A small dot pulsed on the map over Newport Beach. Good girl. The next morning, Max stood in front of his bathroom mirror in Dennis's house, methodically shaving. Noah entered without knocking. What's the plan, Dad? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. We're not just going to let them steal everything, right? Max rinsed his razor. We're not. Brooke keeps texting me. Says they're moving the hearing up. That Powell has the judge in his pocket. That it's a done deal. Noah's voice cracked slightly. Says you should just sign the settlement and move on. Max dried his face and turned to his son. Do you trust me, Noah? Yes. Then remember this. In war, the side that appears to be winning is often the side walking into a trap. Is that what this is? War. Max's eyes hardened. They made it one. Later that day, Max visited a safety deposit box at a nondescript bank in Arlington. Inside was a weathered, sealed military file folder with top secret stamped across its cover. He tucked it under his arm and made a phone call. The hearing's been moved up to tomorrow, he told Garcia. I need you there at 0900. With the file. With the file. Chapter 5, The Hearing. Judge Vernon Royce had presided over family court for 22 years. He'd seen every type of divorce imaginable. Amicable partings, vicious battles, tearful reconciliations. But something about the Winters case made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The courtroom was sparsely populated when Maxwell Winters entered precisely at 8:55 a.m., dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit. He was accompanied by a military officer in full-dress uniform and a civilian who took seats directly behind him. No attorney. At the opposing table sat Adrian Winters, blonde hair perfectly styled, in a conservative blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Beside her sat Bryant Powell, a tan, silver-haired man with the artificial smile of a career salesman. Behind them sat a teenage girl who kept her eyes fixed on her phone. Brooklyn, Judge Royce presumed from the case file. The Winters' high-powered attorney, Patricia Holbrook, was already sorting documents when Judge Royce called the court to order. Case number 2023, FC 1458, Winters versus Winters, the clerk announced. I understand the respondent is representing himself? Judge Royce asked, eyeing Maxwell dubiously. That is correct, Your Honor, Max replied calmly. And you're aware, Mr. Winters, that your wife is seeking dissolution of marriage on grounds of abandonment, with a proposed settlement already filed? I am. Patricia Holbrook stood. Your Honor, given Mr. Winters' choice to proceed without counsel and the comprehensive settlement agreement already prepared, we request summary judgment. Mrs. Winters is simply asking for an equitable division of assets accumulated during a marriage that Mr. Winters effectively abandoned through his repeated extended absences. Judge Royce noticed Maxwell's complete lack of reaction. Most self-represented litigants would be objecting already. Mr. Winters, do you wish to contest the abandonment claim or the proposed settlement? I do, Your Honor. On what grounds? Max stood. Fraud, conspiracy, and illegal conversion of assets. Holbrook scoffed. Your Honor, these are serious and completely unfounded allegations. Do you have evidence to support these claims, Mr. Winters? The judge asked. I do. Max turned slightly. With the court's permission, I'd like to call Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Garcia as a witness. Judge Royce frowned. This is highly irregular for a divorce proceeding, Mr. Winters. So is selling your deployed husband's house out from under him, Your Honor, Max replied evenly. The judge hesitated, then nodded. I'll allow it, but this better be relevant. Colonel Garcia took the stand and was sworn in. Colonel Garcia, what is your relationship to me? Max asked. I was your commanding officer during your recent deployment to classified locations in Southwest Asia. And on what dates was I deployed? From January 15th to May 12th of this year. You were under my direct command and physically present in combat theaters outside the United States for that entire period. During this deployment, did I have regular access to civilian communications or the ability to manage my domestic affairs? No. Your mission parameters restricted communications to military channels only, with extremely limited exceptions for family emergencies. Max nodded. Thank you, Colonel. I'd like to introduce into evidence a sealed military file that Colonel Garcia has brought with him today. Holbrook jumped to her feet. Objection, Your Honor. We have no idea what's in this alleged military file, nor has it been disclosed during discovery. It was impossible to disclose during discovery, Counselor, Max replied calmly, as I was deployed in a combat zone without access to civilian legal proceedings. Judge Royce frowned. I'll review the file before determining its admissibility. Colonel Garcia approached the bench with a weathered folder bearing multiple security classification markings. Judge Royce opened it and began reading, his expression gradually shifting from skepticism to shock. After several minutes, he looked up, his face ashen. Counsel and parties to my chambers immediately. He turned to the bailiff. Clear the courtroom of all other persons. As the spectators filed out, Adrian leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently. Bryant Powell maintained his confident smile, though it had noticeably tightened. In the judge's chambers, Maxwell stood quietly as Judge Royce placed the file on his desk. Mrs. Winters, Mr. Powell, are you aware of the contents of this file? The judge asked sharply. Adrian looked confused. No, Your Honor. Ms. Holbrook, I'm going to ask you something very important, Judge Royce continued. Were you aware of Mr. Powell's previous involvement in similar situations with deployed service members? The attorney looked genuinely surprised. No, Your Honor. Judge Royce turned to Maxwell. Mr. Winters, am I correct in understanding that you wish to pursue criminal charges separately from the divorce proceedings? That is correct, Your Honor. The color drained from Bryant Powell's face. Criminal charges? This is absurd. What exactly am I being accused of? Max finally turned to look directly at the man who had stolen his wife, his home, and his daughter. Fraud, conspiracy, wire fraud, identity theft, and violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act, to start. This is preposterous. Powell sputtered. Adrian had power of attorney, which does not cover knowingly conspiring to defraud a deployed service member. Judge Royce interrupted. Mr. Winters has provided evidence suggesting a pattern of targeting military families during deployments. Adrian turned to Bryant in horror. What is he talking about? For the first time, Max addressed his wife directly. He's done this before, Adrian. 3 times. Different states, different names sometimes. The FBI has been building a case for years. That's a lie, Powell shouted. Adrian, don't listen to him. The file contains sworn affidavits from 3 previous victims, Judge Royce stated flatly, along with banking records showing transfers following identical patterns to those in the Winters case. Adrian's composure cracked. Bryant, what have you done? Nothing that wasn't completely legal, Bryant insisted. Everything was done with your authorization, with your signature. Under false pretenses, Max corrected. While I was deployed, which triggers federal protections under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Judge Royce cleared his throat. In light of this evidence, I am freezing all assets currently held by Mrs. Winters and Mr. Powell pending further investigation. The divorce proceedings are stayed until the criminal matters are resolved. You can't do that, Bryant protested. I just did. Judge Royce turned to his clerk. Please contact the U.S. Marshals Service and get the FBI liaison on the phone. As reality crashed down around them, Adrienne's voice shook. Max, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about his history. Max's expression remained unchanged. But you knew you were selling our house. You knew you were emptying our accounts. You knew you were filing fraudulent abandonment claims while I was deployed in a combat zone. For the first time, tears welled in Adrienne's eyes. You were never home. You were never part of this family. I built this family, Max replied, his voice deadly quiet. I protected this family. I provided for this family. And you sold it all out from under me for a con man with a tan and a Rolex. Judge Royce interrupted. Mr. Winters, what do you wish to do about your daughter? She's a minor still under your legal guardianship. Max glanced toward the door, thinking of Brooklyn waiting outside. She made her choice, Your Honor. She'll have to live with the consequences, just like her mother. As they exited the chambers, 2 U.S. Marshals were already waiting to escort Bryant Powell from the building. Adrienne stood frozen, watching her carefully constructed new life collapse in real time. Brooklyn finally looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from boredom to confusion to alarm. Mom? What's happening? Before Adrienne could answer, Max approached his daughter. They lied to you, Brooklyn. They stole everything and told you it was legal. Now they're facing the consequences. Brooklyn's eyes widened. But you were gone. You were always gone. And yet somehow I saw everything, Max replied, his voice softening slightly. The beacon I gave you wasn't just for emergencies. It was a monitoring device. Every conversation in its vicinity was recorded and transmitted to my secure server. Brooklyn's face drained of color. You spied on me? I protected my assets, Max corrected. Including you, whether you wanted that protection or not. As Bryant was led away in handcuffs, the reality of their situation finally hit Adrienne. Max, please. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? Max looked at his wife of 20 years with cold detachment. Not my problem anymore. Chapter 6. The Confession. The safe house in Arlington was sparse but functional. Noah paced the living room while Max sat calmly reviewing documents from the file. So that's it. Noah demanded. Powell goes to jail. Mom and Brooke are left with nothing. And we just move on? Max looked up from his papers. Justice isn't always satisfying, son. This isn't justice. This is... I don't know what this is. It's consequences, Max replied simply. Actions have consequences. Noah collapsed onto the couch across from his father. I get it. What they did was wrong. But cutting Mom and Brooke off completely? They're still family. Family doesn't betray family. Max's voice carried a finality that brooked no argument. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dennis Kolchak entered, followed by Colonel Garcia. The FBI has expanded the investigation, Dennis reported. They've identified 2 more victims of Powell's scheme. All military, all deployed when it happened. Max nodded. As expected, Garcia handed Max a tablet. The Newport Beach property has been seized as evidence. Adrienne and Brooklyn have been temporarily relocated to a hotel. Has she contacted Noah? Max asked. Repeatedly, Noah interjected. I haven't answered. Max nodded approvingly. Good. There's something else, Garcia said hesitantly. Powell is offering to cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for leniency. Max's expression didn't change. Against whom? Adrian. He claims she was the mastermind, that she sought him out specifically because of his reputation for helping military spouses escape their marriages. Noah jumped to his feet. That's bullshit. Mom wouldn't. Yes, she would, Max interrupted quietly. And she did. The room fell silent. Max opened a secure laptop and turned it toward the others. On screen was an email from Adrian to Bryant Powell, dated 3 months before Max's deployment. Mr. Powell, after our discussion at the charity gala, I've given considerable thought to your suggestion. My husband is scheduled for deployment in January. As discussed, I believe this presents the optimal window for the restructuring we talked about. He suspects nothing. Adrian Winters. Noah stared at the screen in disbelief. How did you get this? I've monitored all our accounts for years, Max explained. It's basic operational security. You spied on Mom? On all of us. I protected my family and my assets, Max corrected. Your mother made contact with Powell at a fundraiser last October. By December, they were lovers. By January, they were plotting. Noah sank back onto the couch, his world collapsing around him. So everything, the college fund, the house, all of it, was targeted from the beginning, Max finished for him. Your college fund was protected in an irrevocable trust. They couldn't touch it. But everything else was fair game once I was deployed. Dennis cleared his throat awkwardly. Max, there's something else you should know. Brooklyn has been trying to reach you. Max raised an eyebrow. Through what channel? The beacon. She activated the emergency protocol. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Max's features. When, 3 hours ago, Max stood immediately. Where is she now? Still at the hotel in Newport Beach. But according to surveillance, Adrian left the property 2 hours ago and hasn't returned. Max turned to Garcia. Get me transport to California. Now, as Garcia made calls, Noah confronted his father. I thought you said Brooklyn made her choice. That she had to live with the consequences. She did, Max replied, checking his weapon. But she's still my daughter. And she's still a minor under my protection. 6 hours later, Max and Noah stood outside a luxury hotel suite in Newport Beach. 2 FBI agents flanked them as Max knocked firmly on the door. Brooklyn opened it, her eyes red from crying, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. She stared at her father and brother for a long moment before speaking. She's gone, Brooklyn said, her voice hollow. Mom took everything she could carry and disappeared. She said to tell you that you win. Max's expression softened marginally. May we come in? Inside the suite, Brooklyn collapsed onto a couch. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believed her. I believed everything. That you were never coming back, that you didn't care about us, that we deserved what we took. Max sat across from her, his posture rigid but his eyes watchful. Tell me everything. As Brooklyn recounted the past months, the manipulation, the promises, the gradual revelation that Powell had done this before, Max listened without interruption. Noah paced by the windows, occasionally glancing at his sister with a mixture of anger and sympathy. When did you realize? Max finally asked. After the hearing. When they took Powell away, Mom completely changed. She started making calls, moving money. She was like a different person. Brooklyn looked up, tears streaming down her face. She told me you bugged me. That the beacon was a tracking device. Is that true? Yes. So you heard everything? Every time I badmouthed you. Every time I agreed with them about how terrible you were. Yes. Brooklyn's face crumpled. Then why did you come when I activated it? Why would you help me after what I did? For the first time since the nightmare began, Max's careful composure cracked. Because you're my daughter. My choices put me away from this family for most of your life. Your mother's choices taught you to resent me for it. But none of that changes the fact that protecting you is my responsibility. What happens now? Brooklyn asked quietly. Now we find your mother, Max replied, his voice hardening once more. And we finish this. Chapter 7, The Hunt. The FBI safe house in San Diego was a far cry from the luxury Newport Beach Hotel. Brooklyn sat at the kitchen table, absently stirring a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Noah leaned against the counter, watching his father with a mixture of awe and horror as Max methodically constructed a timeline on the living room wall. How are you so calm? Noah finally asked. Mom stole millions from you. tried to take everything, then disappeared. Aren't you angry? Max placed another document on the timeline. Anger is counterproductive. You haven't even raised your voice once through this whole thing. It's not normal, Dad. Max paused and turned to his son. Would yelling bring back the house? Would rage recover the money? Would emotional outbursts help us find your mother? No, but then they serve no purpose. Max returned to his work. In my profession, emotional responses get people killed. Brooklyn looked up from her tea. Is that what this is to you? Just another mission. Before Max could answer, the door opened and Dennis entered with Colonel Garcia. We've got something, Dennis announced, placing a laptop on the table. Adrian used her emergency passport at the border crossing in Tijuana 12 hours ago. Max studied the grainy surveillance image. Mexico is just a transit point. She has no connections there. Agreed, Garcia replied. We think she's headed for Belize or Costa Rica, somewhere with banking secrecy and limited extradition. Max tapped the screen. She's traveling under Adrian Walsh. Her maiden name. The FBI has flagged her passport, but if she's moving through non-official channels. Dennis let the implication hang. Brooklyn stood suddenly. I know where she's going. All eyes turned to her. When they were planning everything, Powell mentioned a property in Belize. A backup plan if things went sideways. Brooklyn's voice shook slightly. They never told me the exact location, but Mom has a private album on her phone labeled Placencia. Max pulled up a map on his tablet. Placencia, southern coast of Belize. Popular expat destination with limited law enforcement presence. Could be thousands of properties, Dennis pointed out. How do we narrow it down? Max turned to Brooklyn. What else do you remember? Any company names, references to the property. Brooklyn closed her eyes, concentrating. Pelican something. Pelican. Point. No, Pelican Rise. Max's fingers flew across the tablet. Pelican Rise Development. Luxury villas on the Placencia Peninsula. He showed them a website featuring exclusive beachfront properties. Noah leaned over his shoulder. How do we know which one is hers? We don't, Max replied. But we know someone who does. 8 hours later, Max sat across from Bryant Powell in a federal detention center visiting room. The once confident real estate developer had lost his tan and his swagger, his prison jumpsuit a far cry from his tailored suits. I've got nothing to say to you, Powell sneered. My lawyer advises against any conversation. I'm not here to talk, Max replied calmly. I'm here to offer you a deal. Powell laughed bitterly. You've got nothing I want. I have influence with federal prosecutors. Right now, you're facing 20 years minimum. I can get that reduced to 5. Powell's expression shifted subtly. In exchange for what? Adrienne's location in Belize. The exact property, security details, account information. Why would you need that? To get revenge on your wife? The courts will handle that. Max leaned forward slightly. The courts can't reach her in Belize. And she's taken something that belongs to me. The money, Powell scoffed. Always about the money with you military types. Not the money, Max corrected. Information. Classified information that could compromise national security. Powell's eyes widened slightly. Adrienne wouldn't. Adrienne doesn't know what she has, Max interrupted. But if she sells that house or its contents to the wrong people, she'll be facing charges far worse than fraud. It was a lie, expertly delivered. There was no classified information. But Powell didn't need to know that. Powell studied Max's face, looking for deception and finding none. Villa 23, Pelican Rise. Purchased through a shell corporation called Sunset Holdings. There's a safe in the master bedroom closet, behind the mirror. Combination 36-24-36. The accounts. Offshore. First Caribbean Bank in Belize City. Under the name Angela Walsh. Max stood. I'll inform the prosecutors of your cooperation. As he turned to leave, Powell called after him. She played us both, you know. She was planning this for years, long before she met me. Max paused at the door. I know. That night, in the safe house, Max briefed the team on the next steps. The FBI can't operate officially in Belize without diplomatic clearance, which would take weeks, Garcia explained. By then, she could be anywhere. So what's the plan? Noah asked. I go alone, Max replied. Unofficial. Off the books. Dennis shook his head. That's insane, Max. If you're caught operating extra-legally in a foreign country, I won't be caught. Brooklyn, who had been silent throughout the planning, finally spoke up. Take me with you. Max looked at his daughter in surprise. Absolutely not. She'll run if she sees you coming. But if I contact her, tell her I've escaped from protective custody and want to join her. Brooklyn's voice was steady now, determined. She'll let me in. No, Max said firmly. Too dangerous. It's my fault too, Brooklyn insisted. I helped her. I chose her side. Let me help fix this. Max and Noah exchanged looks. She has a point, Dad, Noah said reluctantly. Mom trusts Brooklyn. Max was silent for a long moment, studying his daughter's face, the determination in her eyes so similar to his own. We do it my way, he finally said. Every step. No deviations. Brooklyn nodded solemnly. Your way. 48 hours later, a private charter landed at Philip Goldson International Airport in Belize. Max and Brooklyn passed through customs using cover identities, a father and daughter on a diving vacation. They rented a nondescript SUV and drove the 3 hours south to Placencia. As they approached the exclusive Pelican Rise development, Max pulled over to review the plan one final time. The microphone will pick up everything within 20 feet, Max explained, adjusting the small device in Brooklyn's earring. The tracker in your watch will show me your exact location. If anything seems wrong, anything at all, use the code phrase and I'll extract you immediately. Brooklyn nodded nervously. The weather in Virginia is lovely this time of year. Exactly. Once you've confirmed her presence and the location of any documents or valuables, excuse yourself to the bathroom and unlock the rear patio door. And then, Max's expression was unreadable. And then I finished this. Chapter 8, The Confrontation. Villa 23 at Pelican Rise was a modernist masterpiece of glass and concrete perched on the edge of the Caribbean Sea. Brooklyn stood at the front entrance, heart pounding, rehearsing what she would say. The weight of the transmitter in her earring and the tracker on her wrist felt like anchors. She pressed the doorbell. Through the security camera, Adrienne's voice crackled. Who is it? Mom, it's me. Please let me in. Silence. Then the electronic lock disengaged. The door swung open to reveal Adrienne Winters, or Walsh, as she now called herself, wearing a flowing white caftan, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her expression shifted from shock to joy to suspicion in seconds. Brooklyn? How did you? I ran away. Brooklyn interrupted, the rehearsed story flowing smoothly. The FBI was planning to use me as bait to lure you back. Noah's completely on Dad's side now. I couldn't stay there. Adrienne pulled her daughter inside and quickly locked the door, checking the security cameras for any followers. How did you find me? She demanded, still scanning the feeds. I remembered you and Bryant talking about Placencia. About Pelican Rise. Brooklyn forced tears into her eyes. You're all I have left, Mom. They turned Noah against me. Dad treats me like I'm a traitor. Adrienne's suspicion melted into sympathy. She embraced her daughter tightly. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you were caught in the middle of all this. Over her mother's shoulder, Brooklyn scanned the villa's interior. Open-concept living area, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Caribbean, minimalist furniture that must have cost a fortune. All purchased with her father's money. Are we safe here? Brooklyn asked, pulling back from the embrace. For now, Adrienne replied. I have contingency plans if we need to move quickly. She led Brooklyn to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water. How did you get here? The FBI must be monitoring airports. I used the emergency cash Dad always kept in the house, Brooklyn lied smoothly. Bought a ticket to Cancun using a college friend's ID, then took buses across the border. It took me 3 days. Adrienne smiled proudly. You're more resourceful than I gave you credit for. You get that from me, not your father. Brooklyn took a deliberate sip of water. What happens now? Bryant's in jail. The FBI's frozen everything. Not everything. Adrienne corrected, her eyes hardening. Your father wasn't as clever as he thought. I've been planning this exit for years, Brooklyn. Long before Bryant. I've got enough set aside to keep us comfortable indefinitely. In the safe? Brooklyn asked innocently. Behind the mirror in your closet? Adrienne's eyes narrowed slightly. How did you know about that? Brooklyn felt her heart rate spike, but kept her expression neutral. I overheard you and Bryant talking about it. The night before Dad came back. After a moment, Adrienne relaxed. Yes, among other places. Your father taught me one useful thing. Never keep all your assets in one location. As the evening progressed, Brooklyn carefully extracted more information through casual conversation. account numbers memorized, property details noted, all transmitted through her hidden microphone to Max, who was monitoring from a rented boat offshore. "Can I use your bathroom?" Brooklyn finally asked, after confirming the location of the safe and Adrienne's contingency plans. "Of course. Down the hall, second door on the right." In the bathroom, Brooklyn sent a text from a burner phone. "Ready. All targets confirmed." On her way back, she took a detour through the kitchen, quickly unlocking the patio door as planned before rejoining her mother in the living room. "I've been thinking," Adrienne said, refilling her wine glass. "We should leave tomorrow. This place may be compromised if you found it." "Where would we go?" "I have another property. More remote. We can disappear completely." Brooklyn forced a smile. "That sounds perfect." Adrienne looked at her daughter with sudden intensity. "I need to know you're with me completely, Brooklyn. No divided loyalties. Your father can never know where we are." "I'm with you, Mom. 100%. Adrienne studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Because there's no going back now. Your father will never forgive either of us." "I know," Brooklyn replied softly. "He never forgives anyone who betrays him." Something in Brooklyn's tone made Adrienne pause. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Take off your earrings." Brooklyn felt her blood turn cold. "What?" "Your earrings," Adrienne repeated, her voice hardening. "Take them off. Now." Slowly, Brooklyn reached up and removed the transmitting earring. Adrienne snatched it from her hand, examining it closely before crushing it under her heel. "He sent you," Adrienne said, her voice dangerously calm. "You're wired." "Mom, I don't know what you're." "Don't lie to me," Adrienne shouted, all pretense of warmth vanishing. "Your father taught me about surveillance too." "Where is he?" "Outside." Before Brooklyn could respond, the lights throughout the villa went out, plunging them into darkness broken only by the moonlight streaming through the windows. "He's here," Adrienne whispered, grabbing Brooklyn's arm. "Move." She dragged Brooklyn toward the master bedroom, her grip painfully tight. Inside, she shoved Brooklyn against the wall and ran to the closet, frantically removing the mirror to access the safe. "Mom, please," Brooklyn pleaded. "Just turn yourself in. It'll be easier." "Easier?" Adrienne laughed bitterly as she spun the safe's dial. "Your father would see me rot in prison for the rest of my life." This was never about the money for him. It was about control. It always has been. The safe door swung open, revealing stacks of cash, passports, and a small handgun. Adrienne grabbed the weapon and turned to Brooklyn. "I'm sorry it came to this," she said, her voice steady as she checked the gun. "I really did hope you were telling the truth." Before Brooklyn could respond, a calm voice spoke from the bedroom doorway. "Put the gun down, Adrienne." Max stood silhouetted against the hallway, his posture relaxed but alert. In the dim emergency lighting, his expression was hidden in shadow. "How fitting," Adrienne said, keeping the gun trained on Brooklyn. "The spy who came in from the cold. Did you enjoy listening to our conversation, Max? Did it confirm everything you always suspected about me?" "I never needed confirmation," Max replied evenly. "I've known who you really are for years." Adrienne's laugh was hollow. "Then why stay? Why the charade of a family? Of a marriage?" "The children," Max said simply. "They deserved stability. They deserved a father who was present." Adrienne snapped. "Not a ghost who materialized every few months to check if his possessions were still in order." "Lower the gun," Max repeated, taking a single step forward. "It's over." "It's not over until I say it is," Adrienne replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I have a boat docked behind the property. Brooklyn and I are leaving. You'll let us go, or I'll make sure she pays for your stubbornness." For the first time, something like emotion flashed across Max's features. "You would threaten your own daughter?" "I'm protecting her from you," Adrienne shot back. "From becoming another one of your assets to be monitored and controlled." Brooklyn spoke up, her voice surprisingly steady. "Mom, he's not alone. The house is surrounded." Adrienne glanced nervously toward the windows. "You're lying." "No, she's not," Max confirmed. "Colonel Garcia is here with a team. The Belizean authorities have granted emergency dispensation for their presence. There's nowhere to run." Adrienne's resolve visibly wavered. "I don't believe you." "Believe this," Max continued, his voice softening slightly. "If you put down the gun now, Brooklyn won't have to testify against you. I'll ensure the charges are reduced. You'll serve time, but not as much as you deserve. And if I don't, Then I'll make sure you never see daylight again. The standoff stretched for what felt like eternity. Finally, Adrienne's shoulders slumped. She lowered the gun. You win, Max. You always win. As she placed the weapon on the bedside table, Max moved quickly to secure it. Brooklyn rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her father, burying her face in his chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. Max's posture remained rigid for a moment before his arm came up to encircle his daughter. It's over now, he said quietly. You're safe. Adrienne watched the embrace with bitter resignation. You turned my own daughter against me. Congratulations. Max looked over Brooklyn's head at his wife of 20 years. No, Adrienne. You did that yourself when you chose money over family. When you taught her that loyalty means nothing. That vows mean nothing. That commitment means nothing. As if on cue, Colonel Garcia entered the room, accompanied by 2 Belizean police officers. Adrienne Winters, Garcia announced formally. You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. As the officers handcuffed her, Adrienne maintained eye contact with Max. This isn't justice, Max. This is revenge. Max's expression remained impassive. In my experience, sometimes they're the same thing. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 6 months later, Maxwell Winters stood on the balcony of his new home, a modernist structure of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Potomac River. Behind him, Noah and Brooklyn argued good-naturedly over pizza toppings, their voices drifting through the open sliding door. Dennis joined him on the balcony, offering a glass of bourbon. Not bad for a fresh start. Max accepted the drink with a nod. Smaller than McLean. More defensible. Dennis chuckled. Only you would evaluate a $3 million luxury home based on its tactical advantages. Inside, the pizza debate continued, punctuated by laughter, a sound that had been absent from their family for too long. They're adjusting well, Dennis observed. They're resilient, Max replied. They get that from me. The Belize operation had concluded exactly as Max had planned. Adrienne had been extradited to face federal charges, eventually accepting a plea deal for 8 years in a minimum security facility. Bryant Powell had received 12 years after additional victims came forward. The offshore accounts had been recovered, the stolen assets returned. Any word from Adrienne? Dennis asked carefully. She writes to the kids monthly. Noah doesn't respond. Brooklyn does. Max's tone remained neutral, but Dennis detected a hint of approval regarding Brooklyn's choices. And the house in Newport Beach? Sold. The proceeds are in trust for the children. Max took a sip of bourbon. I won't touch money she tainted. Colonel Garcia arrived an hour later, joining the family for dinner. The conversation remained light until the children retreated to their rooms, leaving the 3 men alone with their drinks. The investigation is officially closed, Garcia reported. All assets recovered, all charges filed. It's over, Max. Max nodded but said nothing. Have you thought about what's next? Dennis asked. The agency has been calling. They want you back in the field. I've given enough to the agency, Max replied. 20 years of my life. My marriage. Nearly my children. So, retirement. Garcia looked skeptical. Reassignment, Max corrected. Domestic operations only. No more deployments. Dennis raised his eyebrows. They agreed to that. They didn't have a choice. For the first time that evening, the corner of Max's mouth curved in the ghost of a smile. I still have copies of all the files. Garcia nearly choked on his drink. Jesus, Max. Insurance, Max said simply. Always have insurance. Later that night, long after the guests had departed and the children had gone to bed, Max sat alone in his study. On his desk lay 3 files. One for Adrienne, one for Noah, and one for Brooklyn. Each contained detailed plans for their future, investment strategies, educational opportunities, security protocols. He placed his hand on Brooklyn's file. Her betrayal had cut deepest, yet her redemption had been the most complete. In Belize, she had risked her life to help bring her mother to justice. She had chosen loyalty over comfort, integrity over ease. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Brooklyn stood in the doorway, wearing pajamas, looking younger than her 16 years. Can't sleep? Max asked. She shook her head. I keep thinking about Mom. About what happens when she gets out. That's 7.5 years away. A lifetime. Will you ever forgive her? Brooklyn asked quietly. Max considered the question carefully. No. Brooklyn nodded, unsurprised. And me? Have you forgiven me? Max gestured for her to sit in the chair across from his desk. What you did in Belize, putting yourself at risk, standing against your mother when it mattered most, that took courage. That's not an answer. I trust you again, Max said finally. That's better than forgiveness. Brooklyn seemed to accept this. The beacon you gave me, was it really monitoring us the whole time? Yes. So you heard everything. Every horrible thing I said about you. Yes. Brooklyn looked down at her hands. Why did you keep fighting for me? Why not just write me off like Mom? Max was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its usual clinical detachment. Because you're my daughter, and I protect what's mine. It wasn't a conventional declaration of fatherly love. But coming from Maxwell Winters, a man who had spent his life hiding his emotions behind an impenetrable wall of discipline, it was everything. Brooklyn smiled slightly. Good night, Dad. Good night, Brooklyn. After she left, Max returned to the files on his desk. With deliberate precision, he closed Adrienne's file and locked it in the bottom drawer. Some betrayals could never be forgiven, some wounds never healed. Adrienne had made her choice, and now she would live with the consequences, as would anyone who dared to betray him again. But for Noah and Brooklyn, he left their files open on his desk. Their story was still being written, and this time, he would be present for every chapter. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.